Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're watching this, you're watching Fish Den 365. I'm Den Haring, and welcome back to Top Water Tuesday. The best day of the week, as long as you have top waters involved in it. Today, we're going to be talking about one that you may want to watch, and it's all about poppers that won't break the bank. Okay, so we're going to be talking about a lot of different poppers today. These are top water lures that have stood the test of time, and there's a lot here to go through. These poppers are all attainable for a very affordable price, $10 or less in almost every case. There might be one here that's just a little over that, but most of these are $10 or less. Some of them are quite a bit less, so we'll get into that. And so this category will be poppers and chuggers. There's some chuggers in here too, which in my opinion is a type of popper. We'll get into that and differences and how to fish them. And what I want to do is go over these, maybe tell you a little bit about the history of some of these poppers. Also talk to you about how I like to fish them and what I use to fish them. All the details for what I like to do with them, which is not the same as a lot of other fishermen. So if I say something that a way that I like to fish these and you don't agree with it, that's fine. You do what works for you. I want to just tell you some of the experiences that I've had and how I fish these things, and some of the successes that I've had on, because this is a bait. One of my favorite top waters is this bait because of the way you can fish it. It's quite versatile. You can fish it in a number of different ways. And so, you know, come late spring, summer, all summer long into fall, I'll usually have one tied on or ready to go somewhere because they're just that good of a topwater bait. So when we're talking topwater, you can't have the topwater category without poppers. All right, let's get started. So the first one here that I want to go through is the Rebel Pop R. So a couple of different sizes on the Pop Rs. This is really what got the whole thing started, and the whole thing started basically by accident. It's a very interesting story. There are two main characters involved with what got the Pop R so popular, and it was Rick Clunn and Zell Rowland. Both of them are professional fishermen, and if I can find it, I will link up here for you the story that Rick Clunn tells. He shows how he fishes these, but he also talks about how this became the famous bait that it was. It almost never did become a famous bait, the Pop R, because it was actually out of production when he discovered it. And well, the rest is history. We'll get into that a little bit now. So what happened was Rick Clunn was fishing with I think a client. It may have been a friend, I'm not sure. And he was fishing a Pop R, but fishing it extremely differently, very, very fast across the water. What I like to call skipping the bait over the water. And Rick Clunn was amazed when he saw how effective that way of fishing a popper was. He never thought of fishing it like that. So he got into doing this and started winning a lot of money in tournaments doing it. He got to the point where he was actually sanding the bait down so that it would have a smooth surface. I don't know if you can see that, but these original Pop Rs have like a rough surface. He'd sand that down. Later the Pop R came out with a smooth surface like that one there. But he'd sand that thing down and make a really good skipping bait out of it. And he won a lot of money, and somewhere along the way he told Zell Rowland about it, and Zell won a tournament. I think he won like $100,000 in a tournament fishing that same thing. Zell Rowland is a top water specialist. This is you know, every tournament he ever won was probably almost always top water involved. He was probably the best top water fisherman on the circuit at the time. Well, anyway, Zell won that tournament, and he let the cat out of the bag when he was asked about what he was using. And Rick Clunn jokes to this day that he still hasn't forgiven him, but I'm sure that he has. But anyway, that's the interesting story about the Pop R. It was actually out of production when it was discovered, and when they found out how good it was and we were winning tournaments on it, Rebel brought it back, and the rest is history. It's still available today. So you got to start with the Rebel Pop R. This bait is about $7. It's very attainable and very affordable, and it's what got the whole thing started. There's a number of other baits that came out that they tried, like the Rico and the Yellow Magic, where the Rico was actually the, you know, Rick Clunn's perfect Pop R, where it had all the the specifications that Rick would have wanted on it for it to be the way he liked it. But then the Rico is a $20 lure, so we're not going to talk about that on this one, on this Topwater Tuesday, because we're talking about poppers that won't break the budget, that'll still catch you a lot of fish. So another Rebel Pop R is this real tiny little guy. I mean, this guy's barely longer than a quarter, and so, but this is the teeny Pop R. And one of the things you're going to notice is I pick up a lot of these baits is a lot of them have feather tails on them. You know, when it comes to topwater lures, sometimes I fish feather tails, sometimes I don't. But when it comes to poppers, more often than not, I'm fishing a feather tail on it. And that's because a lot of times when I fish a popper, it's sitting still for quite a while. And anytime you've got that topwater sitting still, if you have that feather just undulating in the water, if there's just a little ripple or something like that, it makes it a little more lifelike, I think, and it helps you get a few more bites. And it doesn't seem to really hurt the bait when you want to skip it or walk the dog with it for most of these either. When I'm fishing a walk the dog topwater lure, sometimes I'll put a tail feather on there, but oftentimes not, because I'm moving that thing enough where it's going to look lively anyway, right? 1, 2, 3, stop, 1, 2, or I'm just doing a walk the dog steady, and so, you know, less need for feathers on there. But when you're going to fish something like a popper where the bait's going to be sitting still more often, well, then I think those feathers help. And that's why you see feathers on some of these. I like these teeny Pop R color patterns. What do you think of that? Tennessee shad. This is like a ghost minnow, and the bone white is always good too. These things, you know, I used to have to throw them on a spinning rod, but now because of BFS, Bait Finesse Systems, you know, I have a Cashin light rod. I also have a Dobbins BFS rod, and then I have these Corrado BFS reels. And I love throwing these tiny little baits on it because with the bait caster, they're more accurate in casting. You just cast more accurately with them than you can on the spinning rod. And being one that I grew up learning bait caster first, so I'm more in my comfort mode with the bait caster. And now because of BFS, I can throw this little bait as far as you can throw it on a spinning rod, and have all the advantages of the casting rod: better accuracy, easier to work the bait on top, all those great things. So as I go through these baits, I'll let you know which ones I really like and some of the ones that I might not fish as often. The next one I'll show you is one that I don't have a lot of experience with, but it is one that you can get for under $10, I think, still today. That's the other thing. Some of these I'm going to show you are no longer in production, but you can still get them cheap if you know where to look, eBay and some other places. So this is the Excalibur Poppin' Image. I don't have a lot of experience fishing this bait. I just haven't fished it very often. But I'm bringing it up here because I think you can still get this for a good price. I could be wrong on this. I have to take a look at eBay sometimes. I don't know. It might still be available. I'm not sure. But at one time, I'll say it this way, it was less than $10 at one time. Hopefully it still is today. But like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with it, but the paint jobs were way ahead of their time. They have a really natural looking bait fish paint jobs. They have a little more bulk than some of the other poppers. Sometimes that could be good if you have a little bit of a chop to the water, and sometimes maybe it's not as good if the water's real clear and still. This one is one that I just discovered this year, and I like it a lot. It's the KVD. This is a Strike King KVD Splash Popper, and it has some really good features. Number one, it's got two great sizes here, a larger one and a smaller one, and the paint jobs are really, really good. These are identical paint jobs, good bait fish. They come with great feather tails already on the bait, and the mouths are cupped in such a way where you can fish this lure in a bunch of ways. You can bloop it if you twitch that rod a little harder. You can make it do just the subtlest movement, which is also good to do, especially with these feather tails, just by using a subtle movement in your rod. But they also walk. You can walk the dog with these very nicely. Both sizes, very easy to get that rhythm and that cadence going where it goes back and forth, walk the dog. So you can actually fish this with a little more speed if you're trying to, you know, usually when I'm fishing that way, I'll throw the bait out there, I'll let it settle. I might just, you know, do a couple small pops, let it sit there, kind of trying to gauge what the fish really want. Then I might use a couple of bigger pops to get their attention. And if none of that is working, then I'll just send that thing back to me by walking the dog all the way back. Sometimes the fish like to chase that and grab it that way. So, and that's a way you can fish a popper a little bit faster. And even though they're not baits that you would normally think that you can cover water with, you can at least cover some water that way. So yeah, this Strike King one is new for me. Just got it this year. First time fishing it this past year, but I really like it. It's one of my favorites already. For the price, it's a great bait. Here's an oldie but a goodie, and I think you can still get this for a good price. It's not available anymore, but this one I did see on eBay recently for pretty cheap. It's the Berkeley Frenzy popper. This is unfortunate that it's no longer in production, because this was one of my favorites. You know, you can do a lot of things with this one too. I like the way the mouth is. It's a small cupped mouth. You can make this thing pop real nicely. You can bloop it. You can walk the dog with it. It'll do that too. You could also just make the most subtlest movements with it, and that's how I really like to fish this one. Have that tail dangling. It's got a really nice natural bait fish shape to it, and I like this particular color. It really looks like an alewife with the white belly, dark back, bluish sides. Perfect for where you have alewives or shad in the water. Well, let's see. So you say you want to find a cheaper bait. How about for $2? So these two baits right here are both $1.99 each. This one may not be available anymore. This is an old Jan's Netcraft. I think they still might have it. Jan's Netcraft still has this one though. It's actually a better looking bait color wise. It's 2.5 inches. This is a ghost minnow color. I really like that color. I mean, look at that. That for $1.99, you can't beat that. It's got the right shaped mouth. And have I caught fish and used these? Oh yes, I have. These things catch fish. Fish don't care what you paid. Somebody used to have that advertisement out there, and I always liked that, because boy, I found that to be true over the years. The fish don't care what you paid. $2 bait. If it's got the right stuff, it doesn't matter. It's going to catch fish. I've caught a lot on this frog pattern over the years. This is an older bait that I've had for a while. And then now they've got what I would say is a new improved version of their popper. Jan's Netcraft, Janns Netcraft, 2 words. You can look them up. They have a lot of lure making components, and they have some lures that you can buy in lure bodies. These just come as a body, $2 without any hooks on it. But you put your own hooks on, you'd want to anyway. Put your split rings and your hooks on and you're good to go. I like the Gamakatsu EWGs, just like I do on all my other baits. They're a great hook, good for top water as well. And so yeah, $2. You can even get these cheaper if you buy them in bulk. If you buy 5 of them, they're like $1.92. If you buy 10 of them or 20 of them, they come down in price even more per popper. So if you want to get a bunch and a bunch of different color patterns, they offer several color patterns. I mean, if you only had a few dollars that you had to spend and you wanted to get a couple of different colors, this is the perfect way to go about doing it. You'd have to put the hooks on. But once you have that, you've got a bunch of nice poppers in the right colors. They do catch fish. They're a little light. They're a little light to throw. But with today's BFS stuff, it's not an issue anymore. And you could always use a spinning rod if you'd like as well. All right, so more to go through here. So here's a chugger. This is the Storm Chug Bug. Really got to like this bait again. I got reintroduced to it recently in the last year and a half, 2 years now. And it's a bait that's been around a long time. I used to fish it back in the day, but I forgot how good it really is and how good it works. So you can chug water with this thing by hitting it hard. It'll chug a lot of water in front of it. You can just chug it along. But with a little subtler movement of the rod tip, just a subtle twitch, this thing will walk the dog as good as any of these other ones. It walks very well. It's pretty noisy. It's got a lot of rattles in it, so if it's a little bit of a chop or some wind on the water, this thing can get their attention. I like the shape of it. It's got a great profile and a good size. Not too big, not too little. This is a fish catcher. It always was, and it continues to be today for those who still use it. It's just kind of gotten forgotten about over the years. 2 more to share with you. This one is no longer in production, but again, you can get this pretty cheaply on eBay. I'm not sure what happened with this. I think it's so unusual. Look at that mouth. I think it's so unusual that people just thought it was a gimmick or it wasn't a good bait. One of my subscribers got me onto this bait, and I'm very glad that he did. It's a Bill Lewis Spitfire. And this bait, for me, really became interesting. I started playing with this thing quite a bit in the past year, and I caught a number of nice fish on it. I found that, and I wouldn't have thought this to be the case because the mouth is so deep and the roof of it is so far out, I thought that it wouldn't work as a skip bait, and yet that's what I found myself doing with it. Skipping it across the water. Just boom, 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 reeling in, and skip, 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 stop. Skip, 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 and then water's splashing and flying while it's doing that. But you do a really fast 2 to 3 foot distance skip across that water, stop it, do it again. And I've had fish come unglued for that, doing that for bass, for example. So this bait is always going to find a spot in my tackle box now, because I like skipping. I like that skipping action. You can fish it a little faster that way. Now this thing also bloops real well. You can do some of that. I don't think it walks. I don't think it's a walking bait. I don't remember being able to walk it real well. I think you can walk it, but not as well as some of these others that we've already talked about. It's better as, for me anyway, my experience, it's better as a skip bait. If you have a different experience with it though, I'd love to hear your experience in the comments. Okay, so I've saved my favorite popper that doesn't break the bank for last. I've talked about this one before. It's another Rebel. It's a Pop R series, but it's the Super Pop R. And to me, it's so much better than the Pop R. Why is that? Well, I like the shape better. I don't really care for the bigger Pop Rs. They're too thick from top to bottom. To me, that just doesn't look very natural because they're so round. And don't get me wrong, they catch fish, especially the smaller one, right? It's got the much closer profile to the Super Pop R. But I like the Super Pop R for a number of reasons. Number one, it's slender. Number two, it's longer than some of the other Pop Rs. So to me, this has a really nice natural bait fish profile. They offer very nice colors. Here's a baby bass. Here's one that could pass for any type of shad or herring. Again, I have some tail feathers on here. This thing has caught me so many fish over the years, and one of my favorite ways to fish it is to just throw it out there, let the ripples subside, and just ever so slightly twitch the rod tip, and it'll just turn or just bloop a little bit and turn, and just looks like a sick or injured fish out there. And I've gotten so many fish, and this thing catches big fish too. It catches all sizes, but it'll catch big ones as well. And everywhere I throw it, it catches fish. That's the other thing. I haven't found a place that this does not work on. It just catches fish wherever I throw it. And you could walk the dog with this if you want. One of the things that I'll do with this, if you notice the mouths on these baits, these two here are different. Maybe you can see it on that angle. Sometimes I'll play with it with a file and sandpaper to make it do different things. So this one I have set up. I've taken some off the bottom, but I took a lot off the top. That allows me to skip it much quicker on the surface. So this one I use for skipping. This one, I left that top longer. So this one spits more water in front of it. So now when you move this one, it spits water and sprays water out in front of it more. Gets their attention a little bit better if there's a little ripple on the water. So there's different ways to configure these things to fish for the situation that you're in. One other thing I wanted to show you, a lot of times these poppers will come with a bright color, red on the mouth, orange. And a lot of times I'll use red nail polish and put it on there and paint them on. And oftentimes I think red does really good that way. But I've found, and I've read this in an article and tried it myself and found this, sometimes white is good. I painted this with white nail polish on the mouth. And that white, I think sometimes when you pop it, it goes under the water a little bit, and the fish see that white flash, and it gets their attention. And so sometimes having white on the mouth is just as good as or better than red. Something for you to think about and give a try, and let me know in the comments how it's worked for you. So what do I use to fish these things? Well, this is the rod I'm using. I like this. This is an old topwater rod. It's been around a while. It's a Daiwa Light and Tough, specifically for topwater, 6.5 feet long. I'm short. I'm not very tall, so I'm always facing the rod downward. So if I'm in a boat that's kind of low to the water and I have a 7-foot rod, I'd be smacking the water with it. So 6.5 to 6'10", something like that works really well for me for topwater when I want to walk it or just twitch the bait. I like braided line. As my main line, I'll use 20-pound test braid, usually spider wire stealth, and then it's always a mono leader, and that mono leader is almost always 17-pound test. Mono floats, 17-pound test is strong, thick, and it floats even more than, say, 8-pound test would. So I like to use a pretty heavy line. Oftentimes that line is never even in the water for me when I'm fishing these things. I have the rod in a position where I'm moving the bait, and so the line is out of the water. There is one other thing, so that's it, right? I'm using that 17-pound test monofilament almost every case. Sometimes, depending on the situation, or if I don't have that available, I might use 12-pound test or even 10-pound test. Those will work fine as well, especially when you come down to these guys. You got to come lighter, right? 8-pound mono on something like this, on a teeny pop bar. But for these standard sizes, I like a little heavier line. But if the popper is small, then I'll go down to 10-pound test, 8-pound test, and I'll use a BFS outfit. But for one that's sized like this, I'll use the light and tough rod and 17-pound test mono leader on the 20-pound test braid. That braid allows me to cast it very far, and the mono gives me the floating and a little bit of stretch in the line for that when one hits it and takes it under. I get a good opportunity to let him get that thing in his mouth all the way before I set the hook. Now, the one thing that I do that's probably going to be a bit controversial, depending on what you read or what you believe or what you've seen, that is, on all of these poppers, every one of them, I generally fish a very small snap. Now, some people will fish a loop knot. If you talk to Rick Clunn, he ties a knot onto the eye of the bait, and he actually leaves the tag end out a little bit, like almost this long tag end, and he slips the knot to the top part of the bait. And the reason why he wants the knot on the top part of the bait is so that he can do that skipping on the surface. More of it's out, so it'll be easier to skip than if the line was down here. Makes sense, because if you pull it and the line's down there, it's going to want to go down, not up and out. So, but I found that for the way I fish, a tiny snap, no split ring now, just a tiny snap. I use the smallest snap I can find. I don't know if it's a size 1 or 0. It's really little. It's a 1/4 of an inch long, maybe a little less. And so it doesn't take up a lot of space, and it's well, let me show it to you. All right, I'm back. So this is a cross lock snap that Owner makes. I got a couple of bigger ones in here. I'm trying to find the little ones that I generally will use. Here's one. So we're talking, hopefully you can see that in my hand. Try and make it, it is very, very small, and it's very light. So it doesn't seem to affect the balance of the bait in any way, and it gives me some advantages. 2 major advantages. Number 1, I can change the bait very quickly and easily without having to cut and retie. Sometimes that's a pain in the neck when you're on the water and things are moving around on you. And number 2, because it's a snap, it gives me the advantage that a loop knot would give, but it's stronger than a loop knot, and that is the bait can move freely on the end of that snap. So it makes it a little easier to walk the dog with it if I want, or just to give it a little bit more action when I just hit that slightest twitch. It might turn a little bit, and whereas if it was straight tied to that, it might not turn as nicely. It might not look quite as sick or quite as injured. And so I believe the snap actually helps me catch more fish, or at least get more hooked up. It gives me more strikes, and I think the benefits outweigh the cons on this. You know, you might say, well, has the snap ever failed me? I don't think it's ever failed me when I was fishing a popper. I had some snaps fail in the past. One was on a big northern pike, and he actually bit the snap and opened it up. And then there was another one that I lost a fish on a snap that got opened during the fight somehow. But that's out of hundreds of fish, hundreds and hundreds of fish. So I really feel that I've gained more than I lost, because I think they get me more bites, and they don't fail very often at all. They have a very low failure rate if you do the right things. If you use a small snap like this that's got some strength to it, that's cross lock, and you're bass fishing, you know, you're not going to get failures. If you're fishing for big northern pike or stripers, you have to rethink that a little bit, right? You might want to use it maybe a direct line tie or a bigger snap. But for bass, smallmouth and largemouth, I don't think it's an issue. And for me, I think, like I said, it's an advantage. So that's it. I'm trying to think if I missed anything with this video. As you can tell, I get excited about popper fishing. It's a lot of fun. Oh, let me talk a little more about about how I like to fish these and what they're good for. I think I did most of that during this video. These tiny ones that we talked about, the teeny pop, are always good on those days where you have a hard time getting a bit bite, flat calm conditions, dead still. Something small like this could save the day. Conversely, if you have some wind, then something like this noisy storm chug bug can do the trick for you. It makes more noise, gets their attention in those circumstances. By the way, these baits work at night as well, especially the ones that you can walk the dog with. I've had some good success night fishing with these, not just for bass, but for stripers too, especially with the chug bug. I think we talked about the Super Pop R and all the advantages it has. You can do a number of things with this bait. That's one of the reasons why I like it so much. I believe this bait is similar. The Strike King is an interesting bait too because it can do so many things. It walks the dog well, it bloops well, it's got more of a subtle rattle in it. Very good bait. And then even this $2 bait got a good rattle in it. They've made them heavier. When they made this older $2 one, this is a rattle, but it's actually lighter than this one. So they've improved this in that they made the bait a better color, or they gave better color patterns, I'll say it that way. And they also added some weight to the bait so that it's easier to cast. This Jan's Netcraft is hard to beat for $2. Well, that's my popper tutorial poppers that won't break the bank. I hope you found it insightful and helpful. I hope I've inspired you to fish poppers more often. If you don't, if you do and you have some experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear them in the comments. This is a way of fishing that you can fish, you know, fast, you can fish slow, you can do a number of different things with these baits, and they're very, very effective on top. Just talking about them, I can't wait till summer so I can fish these things again, or at least till spring when you can start throwing these. Right now, you can catch fish, by the way, even now on poppers. The water temperature is around 50 degrees where I'm fishing. It's not the best choice, but it can still be done if you're willing to have patience and fish them extremely slowly on the surface under the right circumstances when the fish are a bit active and moving around, chasing bait, that kind of thing. Well, I hope you liked the video. If you did, it really is important to give that thumbs up. That helps me get the video out to more people. I really would like to grow the channel. I'm zeroing in on 4,000 subscribers. I'd like to get there sooner than later. So help me out if you would. Give me that like. And if you haven't done so and you like the videos, you like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You may want to consider hitting that bell. When you do that, it'll give you a notification from when my next video is coming out. I try and do a Top Water Tuesday video every Tuesday. And then I try and add at least one other video during the week. Sometimes I fail at that because I still work full time and I have other things that divide my time. But as time goes on, we'll be putting more and more videos out, I believe. So looking forward to that, and I hope you do too. Until we meet again, be safe out there. And as always, may God bless your fishing endeavors.